like fuckery with those watches. Like I brought my watch. I have a Rolex that my friend Lorenzo gave me, and I brought it to the watch store, and I said, this thing's always fast. I said, it's always like after a couple months, it's like 5 minutes fast. And they go, yep. They go, yeah.
Really?
It's just what it does.
Okay.
And I go, hold on. I go, so you're telling me that it just is always going to be fast? They's like, yeah. It's just like every few months you got to like reset it.
Seems like they should recalibrate that thing.
They can't. They tried. They say every few months, whether it's 4 months or 5 months or 6 months, it's going to be a couple minutes fast.
Okay, it seems like they should really recalibrate that, because
You
if it's
should
always
figure that
fast,
shit
you
out,
could just
right.
delete those minutes.
You need to fucking kick down the door at Rolex. I go, you bitches are lazy.
It's the whole thing is nuts. There's no real improvement in performance, right? They're beautiful, but I mean, the performance difference between now and 10 years ago is not clear. The whole thing is fucking insane. It's insane.
The Chinese brands exposing the watch industry. Where is that? Actually, move.
Got you right here. This is a CF Rolex I got from Shenzhen for only 120 USD, and it still takes. Everything is perfect.
There have been a couple of videos floating around on Insta, TikTok, YouTube, telling the story of how everything Swiss-made is actually made completely in China. You pay $4,400 for a Metas Tudor Black Bay monochrome. You pay almost $10,000 for a Rolex Submariner. And a Royal Oak Extra Thin, it costs like $36,000. Cheap is not a word that
Rolex CEO storms out after Joe Rogan destroys the brand on podcast. These watches aren't Swiss made. Joe Rogan leaned toward the mic, eyebrow raised, turning the glossy wrist candy on his guest's arm like it was evidence in a courtroom. So you're telling me that Ticker's hand-built on a snowy Swiss mountaintop? He joked, voice dripping with disbelief. The studio laughed, but the jab felt electrified, a split second that cracked the polished veneer of the world's most famous watchmaker. Nobody realized it yet, but a century-old mystique was about to burst like a soap bubble. Within hours, Rogan's inbox lit up like Times Square. Photos of unfinished Rolex cases stacked in dusty Chinese factories, invoices stamped Shenzhen rather than Geneva, and anonymous emails from line workers claiming they'd been machining crowns for pennies while Swiss logos waited in a separate bin poured in. Rogan's fans, notorious for crowdsourcing mysteries, went full detective mode, mapping shipping manifests, cross-checking serial numbers, and freezing frames from brand commercials to spot inconsistencies that had hidden in plain sight. On podcast day, Joe didn't bring a sponsor-friendly monologue. He brought a dossier. He read aloud an alleged invoice for 20,000 oyster steel dials shipped straight from Guangdong to an unmarked warehouse outside Geneva. He played a garbled voicemail from someone claiming to be a factory manager. We make the guts, they add the engraving. The clip crackled through the headphones, cold and matter-of-fact, and suddenly Rolex wasn't a crown, it was a costume. Somewhere in a Zurich boardroom, sources say the CEO listened in stony silence while the episode streamed. Then the factory audio hit, and as insiders describe it, he stood up, shoved back his chair, and walked out without a word. Decades of carefully curated mystique collapsed with that empty doorway. The message to his team was unmistakable. Damage control was impossible because the damage was already public. Celebrity fallout came faster than the stock tick. Kylie Jenner quietly deleted a post flaunting her rose gold Daytona. Drake reportedly shelved a music video scene featuring a Submariner close-up. Even Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, long seen sporting a date just on red carpets, appeared at a gala wearing a rival brand, sparking comment sections that blew up with lines like, "If The Rock dumped Rolex, it's over." It wasn't cancellation culture, it was contagion avoidance. TikTok turned into a forensic lab. Gen Z creators launched Rolex Reality Check, racking up tens of millions of views dissecting Rogan's evidence. One split-screen clip matched a Rolex clasp to a mass-produced counterpart from a budget Chinese brand, pausing to highlight identical machining marks. Another creator smashed a replica with a hammer, declaring, "You're not buying time, you're buying theater," echoing Rogan's rant. Memes bloomed. Swiss made. More like Switch made. The blow wasn't comedic, it was commercial. Meanwhile, watch forums imploded. Collectors who'd spent years on waiting lists felt swindled. Threads titled "My 15 Grand Mistake" and "Heritage or Hype," filled with longtime aficionados admitting they suddenly saw their prized heirlooms as overpriced cosplay. Resale platforms noticed an eerie silence. Rolex listings sat unclicked while prices on rival brands ticked up. One seller slashed 20% off a Submariner overnight, adding, "Need it gone before the market wakes up." Legacy media hesitated, perhaps fearing lawyers, but the silence sounded like complicity. YouTubers, unconcerned with Swiss defamation statutes, dove in head first. Investigative channels officials traced steel supply chains, revealing that Oyster Steel was industry standard 904L stainless, purchasable in bulk for a fraction of the retail markup. Finance analysts joined the dogpile, warning that if customer lawsuits framed the practice as deceptive trade, the class action damages alone could dwarf annual revenues. Suddenly, the tick of a luxury secondhand echoed like a countdown. Behind the scenes, documents allegedly circulated showing 2 other revered watch houses using the same third-party manufacturing networks. One whistleblower pitched a tell-all manuscript titled The Timekeeper's Lie, hinting that Swiss made as a concept might be the grand illusion of modern merchandising. If true, the issue wasn't a single brand scandal, it was an industry-wide existential threat. Rolex tried a classic PR maneuver: quiet, no rebuttal, no statement. But in the age of screenshots and infinite scroll, silence feels like confirmation. Stylists received internal memos advising clients to avoid visible Rolex pieces on upcoming red carpets. A Netflix post-production insider leaked that a close-up wrist shot had been ordered cut. We don't want to touch that right now. The brand that once symbolized unassailable prestige had become radioactive, and brands don't pay ambassadors to wear plutonium. What stings most is the betrayal of narrative. For generations, Rolex commercials painted artisans in lab coats, mountains in the background, a single speck of dust floating like a diamond in sterile air. That imagery sold more than timekeeping. It sold belonging to an elite timeline. Now that pristine lab looks like a green screen, and the crown logo feels stamped on by a marketing intern. Consumers aren't furious solely because parts came from abroad. They're furious because they paid a premium for an illusion of purity. Regulators, according to financial press whispers, are sniffing around country of origin misrepresentation. If authorities classify the practice as fraudulent labeling, penalties could scale per item sold, turning every watch into a ticking liability. One legal analyst compared it to the automotive emissions scandal, but with sentimentality attached. People forgive a dirty engine quicker than a broken dream. Ironically, performance was never the problem. Rogan's rant began over accuracy. His Rolex ran 5 minutes fast after a few months. The watch world always brushed off such quirks as mechanical charm, but charm wears thin when margin math comes to light. If labor costs pennies and materials are commodity grade, where does the 5-figure price tag come from? The answer, Rogan argued, is storytelling. And storytelling, once punctured, deflates fast. Some defenders claim outsourcing minor components doesn't negate final Swiss assembly, meaning the Swiss-made tag still meets legal thresholds. But the court of public opinion doesn't parse legal fine print, it reads vibes. And the vibe after Rogan's episode is betrayal. Enthusiasts who once bragged about the meticulous hand finishing now wonder how many of those hands were actually rotating in faraway provinces, guided by quotas rather than heritage. In Geneva, rumor has it emergency consultants advised launching an authenticity initiative, opening select workshops to live stream tours, letting cameras roll as artisans craft parts in real time. Yet advisors warned, transparency only helps if the reality matches the myth, and right now that gamble looks lethal. One leaked email allegedly asked, "What if live cameras show empty benches?" The reply, "Then we pray the feed crashes." The cultural shift is irreversible. Gen Z views status through transparency, not exclusivity. When they see a logo, they Google the supply chain. If the supply chain stinks, they meme it into oblivion. Rolex isn't just battling allegations, it's battling a generational value realignment where authenticity beats aspiration. In that arena, a secret assembly line is kryptonite. Meanwhile, economic analysts are already sketching worst-case scenarios. If resale prices keep sliding, insurers underwriting high-value collections could face a cascade of revaluations, wiping billions off balance sheets overnight. Auction houses, whose prestige catalogs lean heavily on Rolex lots, have quietly drafted contingency clauses, allowing them to cancel sales if authenticity doubts ding expected hammer prices. Even luxury hotels that outfit penthouse boutiques with Rolex displays are rumored to be swapping signage, afraid a single viral TikTok filmed in their lobby could tether their brand to the fallout. That's how wide the blast radius has grown, beyond metal and gears, straight into ancillary markets built on the promise of credibility. So next time someone flashes a crown on their wrist and brags about timeless craftsmanship, remember the question that detonated the myth. Are you sure that watch is even Swiss, or is it just wearing a Swiss costume? Because in a world where truth goes viral faster than any ad campaign, the real seconds that matter are the ones before the story breaks. And thanks To Joe Rogan, Rolex learned the hard way that you can't outrun time or the internet when both decide your moment is up.